A high school cheerleader faces her sexuality and finds love at a gay conversion camp. Special guest Kevin Smokler joins us to chat about deriving humor from evil, finding a script in your friend's car, and a particularly dangerous matchbook. Then we find out if But I'm a Cheerleader stands the test of time.
Test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today? James says Gladiator with a glut. Alan says as a father, blah blah. It's the test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today? Test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Test of Time. I'm James Brief, and joining me, as always, is Alan Noah, and we also have a special guest. But first, how you doing, Al?
I am doing very well. I am very excited because coming back on the show is our friend, author, podcaster, just all around very, very smart guy, Kevin Smokler. Welcome back to the show, Kevin.
Gentlemen, great to be here again. Always a lot of fun.
It is. It's always great having you. We had you on back in May, just before your new book came out, Break the Frame. Now the book is out. You've been touring for it. You've been going to bookstores. You're talking about it. You've launched Break the Frame, the companion podcast. And so just out of the gate, how's the book tour going?
It's been great. It's been really great to go all over America talking to people about this book, Break the Frame, Conversations with Women Filmmakers, and to talk about movies directed by women. We've been doing a thing where during Q&A, if you don't have anything specifically to ask me or one of the directors I'm presenting, we say, tell us your favorite movies and we will give us your next favorite movie and it will be directed by a woman. That's been a lot of fun. We're going to collect all the responses and post them publicly so people can have a ready-to-go guide of movies directed by women to watch. And germane to our conversation tonight, the very first interview we did for the companion podcast, which was one of my favorite interviews for the book, was with Jamie Babbitt, the director and originator of the idea for But I'm a Cheerleader, and many other great things we'll get to, I'm sure.
And I actually got an opportunity, Kevin, to see you talk with director Deborah Granick. Did I pronounce her name correctly?
You did, yes.
She's the director, Winter's Bone. That's famously Jennifer Lawrence's debut. You spoke at the Greenlight Bookstore in Brooklyn, and that was a great talk, great Q&A, and a lot of fun. So great book too. So if you pick it up, it's available everywhere.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And Deborah Granick is an extraordinary filmmaker and artist, and just one of those people who's just super, super scary smart. You ask a question and then you run behind her like you're a dog chasing a fire engine.
Yeah, you asked her questions really about the filmmaking and how you get actors to do things and how you make casting choices. And a lot of fun. And today I'm excited to talk about this film directed by Jamie Babbitt.
Me too. My favorite thing about talking about movies with people is answering the question as simply and directly as possible, is why this movie is the way it is. And often the answer is, what does it have in common with the other things the people behind it have made? All of Deborah Granick's movies make really good use of silence. They're as much about what people are not saying as what they are saying. It does seem a little film geeky to talk about movies this way, but I think it tells us a lot about what someone like, say, David Fincher will be doing next if we realize that nearly all of his movies are about obsessions and misplaced genius, for example.
Right. I love that approach. You said that in the Jamie Babbitt episode of your podcast where you're talking about that it is sort of inherently sexist, right? That we think about male directors in that way, but not female directors in that way. Why? There really is no good answer to that question.
No. And it's as sort of plain as the nose on your face. It's very easy to say what a Kevin Smith movie looks like, sounds like. It's not as intuitive, even though it should be, to say what a Catherine Bigelow movie sounds like. Even though basically every Catherine Bigelow movie is about jobs and careers. Nearly every Catherine Bigelow movie is about someone who takes on a dangerous job and why they commit themselves to something that puts their own life and sanity in danger. And that's The Hurt Locker, Zero Dark 30, Blue Steel, K9. Pretty much the entirety of Catherine Bigelow's thing is why we choose to do what we do for a living. Point Break is a little bit less that, and that may just be because Patrick Swayze's character doesn't really seem to have a job. But
well, Johnny Utah, he puts his character in a lot of danger by jumping out of planes.
Yeah.
And I know what his job is because he tells you. He says, "I am an FBI agent."
Yeah.
But Kevin, when we were going to have you back on, you suggested this movie, But I'm a Cheerleader, or Half Nelson, and I want to confess why I picked But I'm a Cheerleader over Half Nelson. Two reasons. One is kind of big picture for the podcast, and the other is just purely selfish. But we recently did an episode about American Pie, and we were talking about the actors in that movie ranging from pretty bad to okay to very good, and Natasha Lyonne is in the very good category. So I thought, well, it would be nice to do a movie where we get to see more of her as opposed to the 2 or 3 scenes she's in American Pie. But the other reason is that there's an independent cinema not too far from where I live, and they were doing a screening of But I'm a Cheerleader. So I was like, oh, that's perfect. And I got to see this movie in the theater just a couple days ago, which was a great experience. And I very rarely get to do that for the podcast because, we talk about older movies. And so usually I'm watching them on Netflix or Prime or Hulu or whatever. And so I was just chomping at the bit to go and see this movie in a theater. But James, before we really get into it, why don't you just describe But I'm a Cheerleader for any listeners who haven't seen the movie before?
Sure. This movie is about Megan, a high school cheerleader who thinks that she's straight, but her family and friends think that she's a lesbian. Her parents send Megan to True Directions, a conversion therapy camp. There, Megan meets a strict camp director named Mary Brown, along with other gay kids who she's trying to turn straight. Among them is Graham, a lesbian who's comfortable with her sexuality. At first, Megan wants to follow the program to become straight, but when Graham kisses Megan, she starts to embrace her gay side and falls for Graham. The two have sex, and when Mary finds out, she forces Megan to leave the camp. But Megan returns and shows Graham her true feelings with a custom cheer routine, and the two leave True Directions together.
Aww. Okay, so now's the part where I ask you, James, how did the movie do? Was it a big box office success? And I kind of already know the answer, that this was an indie movie. It did not make a ton of money at the box office, but give us some numbers, James.
Well, actually, it was a very low budget film, and it only had around $1 million budget, and it made $2.5 million domestically. No one bought a new house in the Hamptons from this thing, but I think everyone involved probably did well from this.
Right. And this was Jamie Babbitt's directorial debut, or her feature, right? She'd made a few shorts before, but this was her first movie. And I wanted to ask you, Kevin, because you've talked with Jamie Babbitt, do you know why she chose to frame the story in the way that she did? Meaning that Megan is outed by her family. She doesn't know that she's gay, but all of the other people in her life know that she's gay. And I feel like that is less common, at least in media, in movies and TV shows, and in the conversations I've had with gay friends and family members. It's usually the other way, where the person realizes that they're gay, and then they have to tell this to their parents, their loved ones, and that's kind of the coming out story. And this movie sort of inverts that. Do you know why Jamie Babbitt decided to go in that direction?
I think a lot of it was the order of operations as to how the movie was conceived of.
Okay.
The initial pitch, and I don't know specifically if Jamie Babbitt ever made this pitch to investors or to executives or anything like that, but the idea that she had herself was a rom-com with one butch lesbian and one femme lesbian. And that was the real nugget of the idea for But I'm a Cheerleader. And then later on, she read an article about gay conversion centers And she thought that would be a funny place for this rom-com to take place. The sense of humor of But I'm a Cheerleader is kind of bawdy and over the top. I submit it is singularly one of the funniest movies made in the 21st century thus far. Jamie Babbitt has quite a storied career directing television. What her television career reveals, and what I asked her about when I spoke to her for Break the Frame, was specifically about the work she had done for Mike Judge, who she has a very long, creative, collaborative relationship with. And she told me that her sense of humor and Mike Judge's sense of humor are like twins, like are in complete alignment with one another, like an electron and a proton. And so her sense of humor personally is much more sardonic and dark than the humor in But I'm a Cheerleader. But I think the very premise of a rom-com set in a gay conversion center betrays that very dark and cynical sense of humor she has.
And I think it's interesting that the movie is so funny because just the idea of this is a movie that takes place at a gay conversion camp with very little imagination, you could imagine that being either just a drama or even like a psychological torture kind of movie, a horror movie, because of what these places are and what they do. Just the idea of looking at this and saying, oh, there's comedy there. I mean, there is, and the movie is very funny. The crowd at the theater, when I saw it, they were cracking up regularly throughout the movie. But it's easy to see how it could have gone in a very, very different direction, given how awful these places really are.
Absolutely. And the article that Jamie Babbitt found about gay conversion centers, which inspired that change in what the story of But I'm a Cheerleader became, I believe was about how awful they were. I think part of the reason that But I'm a Cheerleader works so well as a comedy and is so riotously funny, in addition to like really being about something, it's not just funny and nothing else, is because it does that wonderful comic thing of deriving humor from evil, and at evil utterly failing at being evil. Like this is possibly the worst run gay conversion center in history. And it sort of casts permission forward in time for a movie like Jojo Rabbit, for example, where the writer and director of Jojo Rabbit also casts himself as Hitler, which is kind of an interesting choice, and then derives a ton of really interesting comedy out of how completely the character of Hitler is failing at being Hitler.
Right.
Hitler is a whiny, petulant child in Jojo Rabbit. And this gay conversion center run by the great character actor Kathy Moriarty, who would seem more like the villain if Kathy Moriarty wasn't so great at being like evil and funny at the same time, has been a failure since the day it opened. There's not a moment where it's succeeding. It's just laughably bad.
You're right, and so many of the staff that they themselves are gay and masking their homosexuality. There's a lot of villains in this film because, yes, Mary Brown, Kathy Moriarty, she's the evil dean character, but every single one of these parents, and they spotlight every one of them is an enabler to varying degrees that they still love their kids and are willing to take them back if they're gay. There's questionable on that, but they're all bad people for sending them there.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Yeah. I think the casting is so skilled in this movie that although it's friggin' creepy, of course, at the very beginning when Megan's parents send her to the gay conversion center, it's very notable that Megan's parents are played by Bud Cort and Mink Stole. Mink Stole, of course, from the universe of John Waters movies, and Bud Cort, the lead of Harold and Maude as a grown man. Bud Cort has essentially, as an adult actor, has only played characters satirizing or reminding of his former self as a child actor.
Oh.
So I think we see Bud Cort and we see Mink Stole, and the same way that in Promising Young Women, 25 years later, Emerald Fennell would cast Jennifer Coolidge and Clancy Brown, aka the sadistic prison guard in Shawshank Redemption, as Carey Mulligan's parents. In a dark comedy about gender, she has cast two actors who often play grotesques of their respective genders. Jennifer Coolidge in White Lotus, in the Christopher Guest universe, the guest star in that great episode of Sex and the City who throws a fit because everybody's ruining her purse party, and Clancy Brown, who often plays a sadistic, toxic male. You see those actors there, and if you're even a little bit versed in movies, you know something's up. Where you know you're not supposed to take what's happening at face value. Same is true for the parents in But I'm a Cheerleader.
Right, right. Speaking of subversive casting, Mike, the role of the coach at this conversion camp, he's RuPaul.
Yeah.
And that is brilliant casting. I was looking before at RuPaul's IMDb page. There's a lot on there, but not a lot of him acting. A lot of voice acting, a lot of cameos, a lot of him appearing as himself or some version of RuPaul. There's not a lot where he's playing a character like he does in But I'm a Cheerleader. And I thought he was really damn good in this movie. I kind of wish he would do more acting. He's so damn good in this role.
I don't know where this movie and the Brady Bunch movie line up, chronologically speaking, but the Brady Bunch movie had that wonderful cameo with RuPaul playing the high school guidance counselor. I'm not sure which Brady kid RuPaul ends up giving advice to, but the thing that is so ahead of its time about this movie is this is RuPaul Charles in men's clothes.
Yeah.
Which would become a much more common sight later in his career as a performer and much more of his signature look once he becomes the impresario behind RuPaul's Drag Race. But the idea of just casting someone who is clearly RuPaul, but who dresses as a man and is playing a character where we're supposed to know it's RuPaul, but it's actually not. It's actually part of the story and not just a cameo by a famous person is
right.
Genius and is way ahead of its time. Treating RuPaul as an actor and not a celebrity doing a cameo is brilliant.
Yeah. And even just the idea that he's an ex-gay, like that in and of itself is kind of funny.
I would say hilarious, but
yes, it is. It is hilarious. And then you meet these other characters who are ex-gays, which is even funnier, played by Richard Mole, who I recognize from Night Court.
Yeah.
And Wesley Mann. Yeah, there's just inherent comedy in ex-gays and ex-gays.
Yeah, I thought that RuPaul played the part very well because he's wearing a straight is great, and I instantly knew what's going on in this film. The title of this film tells you a lot right away, But I'm a Cheerleader says, oh, okay, so it's going to be a feminine girl, that's a lesbian. But the second I saw this guy, I go, all right, this guy is totally gay, who's going to be the coach here. I'm glad he's never, as opposed to maybe some other characters in this film, he is never like over the top. And he tries to be quote unquote straight at a lot of times when he's asserting his authority and stuff. I agree with you, Al. I'm surprised he's never played other stuff because this role could have been like, remember that movie Mannequin with Hollywood?
Yeah.
And it could have been Hollywood, but just pretending he's straight, but it wasn't. I actually like this character a lot more than I thought his caricature would be.
Absolutely. I think this movie does not score any cheap points. Trafficking in male, gay, or lesbian stereotypes. It doesn't even sink to trafficking in straight people's stereotypes. Famously, Kathy Moriarty said in the oral history, nobody did this movie to collect a paycheck. She read the script and couldn't stop laughing. And she was coming off several movies in a row, I believe. She was about to get married and was eager to start a family because she was in her late 30s. She was like, I'm done for a while. And then her agent sent her this and she's like, okay, maybe not quite done. And to bring in someone like Kathy Moriarty, who started her career as one of Martin Scorsese's go-to actors, and is an Academy Award nominee. To have her playing the villain in 3 or 4 scenes in a movie that cost, 3 nickels to make, it's remarkable the level of faith that the Ultimate cast had in the project. Richard Mull, that role was originally offered to Pee Wee Herman, who said no. But,
Really?
yeah, I think the cast is one of a kind in this movie, and it's like the little movie that launched 1,000 careers.
Yeah, Melanie Linsky. I wasn't expecting to see her. She's baby-faced in this movie.
Yes, I believe this was after Heavenly Creatures. She was not a Los Angeles actor. They had to truck her in from New Zealand, where she lived. And I think one of the producers gathered up a bunch of frequent flyer miles, like pennies out of a dish, and paid to get Melanie Linsky to come to the U.S. and make the movie.
And Dante Basco, he's well known playing Rufio, but he's had a career for many years.
Yeah.
We talk about Natasha Lyonne, and this film was released after American Pie. And this film had to have been, made during 1999. I'm guessing she was cast before American Pie was released.
Yeah, she was.
Oh,
she
okay.
was. She was a little bit on the rise because of Slums of Beverly Hills, which was her first starring role. But famously, she told Jamie Babbitt, and she's very public with this, she says, "But I'm a Cheerleader" was the first movie she was cast in where she was not playing a version of herself, where she was not a wisecracking New Yorker, basically. Natasha Lyonne is not a cheerleader, was not a sort of popular straight kid in high school. It was a very big departure from who she is as a person, unlike American Pie and Slums of Beverly Hills, which really was not.
But in real life, she doesn't really have a relationship with her biological family. She talks about her chosen family is her family, her friends are her family. If you hear Natasha Lyonne talk about the people who she loves, I mean, it's her family. But, that's just one thing that she does have in common with the character.
Yeah, and she was already close friends with Clea Duvall when the casting of this movie began. I think a big part of her interest in it, other than Jamie Babbitt's vision and just how tight the script was that she got to work with someone that she was already pretty tight with.
Well, the story of how she got the role, I heard an interview with Clea Duvall. She was talking about it. She said that Natasha Lyonne was in Clea Duvall's car, and she saw the script, picked it up, and said, "What's this?" And Clea Duvall said, "Oh, it's a movie I'm going to be in," because she had already been cast. And then Natasha Lyonne said, "Hey, can I be in it?" And then Clea's like, "Sure, I'll call the director." It's laughable in how just silly and basic and simple that is to, just find a script in someone's car and then say, "Hey, can I be in this?" "Sure." And then end up with the leading role. And, of course, it wasn't just a favor to Clea Duvall that, Jamie Babbitt cast her. She obviously knew her and saw the talent and everything there. But that's hilarious. It's just a perfect story of who you know kind of a thing.
Yeah. Clea Duvall was more experienced than Natasha Lyonne at this point and had been acting for longer. And Natasha Lyonne, who had a little bit of heat on her because of Slums of Beverly Hills, there was definitely an idea that this was a script that the sort of young and hungry of Hollywood should attach themselves to, or should try and get involved in. A lot of people who would later become famous, like James Franco, auditioned for roles in this movie. Some of the ones who ended up in this movie were famous for this or that. And then the movie was fortunate enough to get people who would become household names a lot later on. Michelle Williams is in this movie for one scene. Julie Delpy is in this movie for one scene, and that's just because her and Jamie Babbitt were film school classmates.
There were some people who didn't want to be in this movie because they were fearful of being in a quote-unquote gay movie or playing a gay character, right?
I think so. I don't know those stories as well. But when people talk about the movie now, there was definitely an understanding that playing gay wasn't something that straight actors did as freely as they do it now.
Right. When you said Pee Wee Herman, I was kind of thinking of that because he was closeted at the time, and
Yeah.
I can imagine that even if the character spoke to him, or he felt some connection to the material, he would have been too fearful to do that. I say that because I was watching the documentary about him where he was talking about just that, being so closeted and so afraid of what would happen to his career if people knew he was gay, if people associated him with gay roles. This is the turn of the century, and I mean, I guess Will and Grace had been on the air for a few years, but there was still some hesitancy there. I think you can also see that in the way that critics responded to this movie. Not in all of the reviews, obviously, but there were some reviews where the sentiment was, this is for gay people and I'm not gay, so I don't get it, which is clearly not what a good critic would say, because there's just so much more to the movie than that. And I think the movie really does work in the way where it is very specific and universal. Like it is specific to the gay experience, but also universal in its relatability to not fitting in and not knowing where you belong, and your parents don't understand you, and things like that. We talked about some of this stuff in our Real Women Have Curves conversation, but I mean, that's the mark of a good movie, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've probably seen this movie 12, 13 times, and I've been asked several times, like, "Oh, you're not like a gay teenager. Why do you like this movie?" Well, because it's hilarious, number one, and number two, there's nothing like watching great people on screen be great,
Yeah.
particularly when they were younger. I love stuff like that. I love stuff where you get to see what people who become household names were doing before they were household names, and how they were all part of this project, because I think it's like an indicator of quality of the project. It is unlikely that actors who were all sort of on the rise all collectively made a terrible decision to do this awful movie. It's happened once or twice, but like more
Right.
likely than not, you're about to watch a good movie.
Yeah.
What I found actually fascinating about this film is it was taking me into a world that I know nothing about, which is gay conversion therapies. I kind of found it pretty fascinating what they did to try to convert these kids. I actually kind of took it seriously. Like, I think some of this stuff might be real. I mean, some of the stuff is like, giving men and women their kind of like manly things, which I thought, all right, maybe that is, chopping wood or, cooking or something. But then they actually really got into it, and they're like, sex is good, and they're basically like promoting heterosexual sex, like the opposite of what most other parents would be saying, like, don't be having sex at 16. Like, they're basically promoting like, this is so awesome what you're gonna do, and there's nothing bad about it. Do you know like where they got these ideas, or is it just kind of made up? Because I had read that she had some experience with her family and rehab centers and stuff.
Yeah, Jamie Babbitt is from Shaker Heights, Ohio, which is a suburb of Cleveland, and her mother ran a drug rehab center. So she was familiar with the world of rehab centers. She got the idea for the Gay Conversion Center by an expose that she read in, I believe, an alternative weekly newspaper in San Francisco. So they do exist. They are largely illegal now, much more so than 30 years ago when she first read about them. But there are some states where they are still legal, as awful as that sounds. I would love to tell you that it was completely a product of Jamie Babbitt's imagination, but alas, no.
Even, Kathy Moriarty's Mary Brown, she wasn't a comic book evil character. No. I think she genuinely believed, because of her son, who's also obviously gay, it's one of those things where you at least understand where where the villain is coming from. The villain's origin story, rather, is probably that. And I appreciated that, while she's evil, it wasn't comic evil. And I did like that.
It's a great villain performance. And Jamie Babbitt famously said that the reason she went after Kathy Moriarty for the Mary Brown role was Kathy Moriarty's performance in Soap Dish, which was, I believe, 7 or 8 years earlier than But I'm a Cheerleader. Kathy Moriarty is fabulous in that movie and plays a similar kind of crabby, perpetually annoyed character. The movie has some a lot of heartfelt moments, but it really does play with a pretty light touch, and everybody kind of has to agree to that for the movie to work. If the villain is too heavy, if we take the sinister intentions of the Gay Conversion Center seriously for one moment, the whole thing is ruined.
We could go down a rabbit hole on this, but I think you could argue that this movie either is or plays with camp in its sensibility. You know, the way that she gets on all fours and she's vacuuming really low to the ground and she's arranging these fake plastic plants everywhere. Kind of to your point, James, about her son Rock, who is so clearly gay, and she's like, no, we don't do that. And it is comically poorly run. Also, if your point is to turn these people straight and you don't want them hooking up with each other, why do you put all of them in one bedroom together? That seems like that could backfire.
Absolutely. As a guy who's worked at a camp for 10 years, I would say every single quote unquote failure of the conversion therapy where the kids quote unquote cheat on the camp has to do with the fact that they do not have constant adult supervision. How does an adult not just sleep in that bunk with them? I mean, you're right. It's kind of incompetent, probably because the idea is incompetent. So
yeah.
I like that there was at least an appreciation that this is obviously going to fail.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's where the movie gets like its real comic juice from.
Like, a couple of these kids are going to fake it for their parents that they're totally straight. But I think it's very clear that not a single kid is quote unquote converted.
The way the movie ends with Megan and Graham riding off together, it's sweet for the love story. It makes perfect sense as an ending. I did kind of walk out of the theater and think, okay, so what happens next for them? Probably they end up back with the XX gays who are kind of running this sort of halfway house. They're taking in kids from this conversion camp, and maybe these two never see their parents again.
That's
because
possible.
They have been cut off, and that's heartbreaking and tragic, but maybe they're better off in a way, not living with these people pretending that they are someone that they're not. But then I was reading today that there's a post-credit scene with Megan's parents, and they're at a support group and they're trying to learn what it's like to be parents of a gay person. Did you see that? I got to be honest, I left the theater before that. I didn't know there was going to be a post-credit scene. It was late. My wife and I were tired. But what's that scene?
This is the first I'm hearing of it, and this is I will admit shamefully that as someone who so much of what I do is about spending quality time with movies, I'm pretty bad at sticking around for post-credit scenes. Probably because I was a bit too old when the sort of Marvel Cinematic Universe landed to be fully committed to it. And so I just never got used to sticking around after the credits.
When I read that there was a post-credit scene, I looked to see if there was video of it on YouTube or whatever. I didn't find it. I was kind of torn on the existence of this scene because that's a happier ending for Megan, the character. Okay, her parents will come around, and it might take time and it might be hard for them, but they're going to try to do the right thing for their kid. That's wonderful for the character. I do also wonder if that does kind of betray everything that happened in the movie, where it does seem like they're pretty shitty parents who are willing to just let their kid go off into the unknown because she's gay. Sure, there can be a change of heart, but I think also just because I didn't see it, it's hard for me to really form an opinion about it. Kevin, was there anything else you wanted to talk about with the movie, with your conversations with Jamie? Anything else that you like, that you love, that you want to mention?
Just this movie is, I would say, is really responsible for bringing Natasha Lyonne and Clea Duvall to our attention, showing us that they could be movie stars. It introduced us to the phenomenal directing talent that is Jamie Babbitt. She's made 6 feature films, all of which are quite good. and many of which include actors like Natasha Lyonne and Clea Duvall repeatedly. And she has really carved out a niche for herself as one of the great directors of the peak TV era. Most notably, Jamie Babbitt directed the pilot of Only Murders in the Building. And the title sequence, perhaps the greatest title sequence of the 21st century, was Jamie Babbitt's doing. I mean, she didn't design it herself, but the idea that the show would begin like this was something her and showrunner John Hoffman kind of put together. So if Only Murders in the Building is your kind of thing, then Jamie Babbitt is your kind of thing. If The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, particularly the episodes where she and her manager go on their road trip, are your kind of thing, then Jamie Babbitt is your kind of thing.
All right. Well, Kevin, you clearly love this movie, but I have to ask, do you think that But I'm a Cheerleader stands the test of time?
Oh, absolutely. And I think, like, for our purposes here, it probably inaugurates the But I'm a Cheerleader rule, which is that if that a movie was not well known in its day and is considered beloved 30 years on, to the extent that it almost convinces us that it was an enormous hit in its day, then it by definition stands the test of time. Now, I suppose we could call that the Harold and Maude rule or the Rocky Horror Picture Show rule or any rule of a movie that was an abysmal failure when it first came out and became so beloved later on that now it seems illogical that Harold and Maude or the Rocky Horror Picture Show or Vertigo, for that matter, were failures their first time around. You may name the rule or not after anyone you want, but I think the But I'm a Cheerleader rule may be worth considering here.
Love it. Love it. James, what do you think? Do you think the movie stands the test of time?
I didn't love the musical score in the film. It was kind of like a little bit of a triangles or xylophone kind of thing. I thought the tone was a little bit off from the music personally for me. And this was a nice film that showed that even a feminine cheerleader girl, you're a lesbian too, and there's nothing wrong with that. I was expecting there to also be maybe a guy there that was more of a, he's totally quote unquote straight and has all these tendencies. That's a different film. It didn't happen. If it was filmed today, they certainly would have caught her watching videos online or something. But the parents were like, oh, you started it being a vegetarian. That was a running joke. And I didn't really know that being vegetarian was a stereotype for being gay. I thought maybe it was more of a political thing. That's maybe test of time that's changed there. But I have to say that it's really, really a nice, quick film. There's no part that's boring. It gets to the point pretty quickly, and it's very well acted. It's funny. I thought this film stands the test of time. What do you think, Al? Remind me again if this was the first time you saw this film.
Yes, I saw it for the first time 3 nights ago at the nearby cinema. My biggest problem with this movie is that I wanted more. I felt like it was short and punchy and it moved, but I still would have liked just more time with these characters, especially at the beginning before Megan goes to the camp. How do they know that she's a lesbian? She's a vegetarian. She likes Melissa Etheridge. She's got a poster of a girl in her locker, and she doesn't enjoy kissing her boyfriend. None of these things really scream she's definitely a lesbian. It would also kind of require her friend, played by Michelle Williams, who sees the poster in the locker, to talk to the boyfriend about how Megan doesn't like kissing and things like that. The A to B to C of it, I think, could be interesting to explore more of. I wouldn't have minded more scenes of that. I think probably there were practical restrictions, a very limited budget, a very short time frame, and also just kind of creatively, you want to get to the camp. That's where the meat of the movie is, so get through the prelude quickly. I get that. My other quote-unquote complaint is I don't like that they get caught by going to the club cocksuckers, which is very funny, because there's a matchbook in the dorm room. That's what she finds. That's just kind of a thing you've seen in movies where they keep one souvenir from the place that they weren't supposed to go to, and then the person who is not supposed to know that they went to the place finds a souvenir from the place, and that's how they get busted. That's just a thing that annoys me just because I've seen it so many times.
Don't keep souvenirs ever.
Exactly. Look, if you want to keep a matchbook from a place, sure. But in this particular case, that is a dangerous matchbook, and not because, of fire-related reasons. These are very small complaints. I very much enjoyed this movie. I thought it was phenomenal. I thought it was really, really funny. I think it definitely stands the test of time. And, in a way, I think it's a little bit depressing that it does stand the test of time. I mean, how great would it be if I could look you guys in the eye and say, of course this movie doesn't stand the test of time. Gay conversion camps? It's crazy that was a thing 25 years ago. Now, here in the year 2025, everyone accepts everyone in the LGBTQ community, and we don't have any need for these horrible places anymore, and this movie is a quaint relic of the past. That would be lovely. I wish I could say all of that. Unfortunately, that's not true. They're illegal in, I think, 23 states or something. There's still a lot of places where these camps exist. By the way, Kevin, I really appreciate the fact that you were avoiding using the word conversion therapy. I hate that the word therapy is in there. I think I used it a couple of times. That is a disgrace to the word therapy, to call these places therapy.
Agreed. I am the son of two psychologists, and yes, I agree with you. And I think you really put it very well, Alan, when you said, like, wouldn't it be nice if homophobia did not stand the test of time?
Yeah, that would be great. I wish I could say, I like the movie, great acting, great writing, great direction, but no, it doesn't stand the test of time because we have evolved so much in 25 years. That's simply not the case, unfortunately. And yes, I think the movie does definitely and definitively stand the test of time. But Kevin, this is a very special milestone for you, because this is your 5th appearance on the Test of Time podcast.
Amazing.
And we're not recording in person, unfortunately. So I had to send you your 5 Timers Club hoodie. It's more fun when we get to hand it to you in person. But regardless, welcome to the 5 Timers Club, Kevin Smokler.
It's fantastic to be here. I've got 2 hands on the hoodie right now, and it's plush and soft. And I think come the winter months will be a regular in my rotation. So thank you, gentlemen.
You're very welcome. Yeah, when people join the club in the summer, it's kind of a weird thing to get a hoodie.
I'm sure, yeah.
But yes, save it for when it gets cold. Welcome to the club, and can't wait to have you back for a 6th appearance, because it's always so much fun having you on the show, Kevin.
Always my pleasure, guys. It's so good to see you again, and thank you for asking.
And continued success with your book, Break the Frame, with the podcast. And I do just want to point out that you can't only listen to the podcast in lieu of reading the book. Like, people need to buy the book also.
Thank you for saying so. I appreciate that.
Of course. Listen to the podcast, but then go and buy the book too, if you haven't already. Go to a local bookstore if you can, instead of Amazon, right? That's always better. But pick up the book. It's great. And yeah, thank you again for joining us, Kevin.
Thanks, guys. Good to see you both.
Well, that's going to do it for us this week. Next week, we're going to be talking about another Cheerleader movie, Bring It On. That movie just celebrated its 25th anniversary. We're going to talk about that. In the meantime, we want to hear from you. We are at Test of Time Pod on Facebook, X, Instagram, and Threads. Write to us. Let us know your thoughts on But I'm a Cheerleader, on Natasha Lyonne, on Clea Duvall, on Jamie Babbitt, on all of the things. We love hearing from you. And we'll see you next time, everyone.
Bye.